Welcome to basketball season. It is here.
Let's go.
It is here. Ashleigh is not here because she is lame and lazy, but we love you, Ashleigh. It's okay.
I don't know what I meant to do thumbs down.
Yeah, thumbs down. I don't know.
I don't know where I was going. I went pointer down. I don't know.
It's too late.
Basketball season.
But it's basketball season. It's technically basketball season today in 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Recording this way too late. But let's get into the start. I mean, are we going to talk about? I think we got to talk a little bit about Binghamton. No, we're not talking about Binghamton. Dude, the game is today. We're talking about Binghamton. Season opener. Northwestern only played Binghamton once, all time back in 2018. Won 82-54, quite a while ago. So they haven't seen this team in a little bit. Chris Collins is 9-1 in season openers in the past 10. So Northwestern trying to extend that streak. Obviously, coming off a really big exhibition win against McKendree. What are you excited about?
I'm excited about really not talking about Binghamton.
No, but we got to talk about Binghamton. It's the season opener.
I know nothing about this Binghamton
team. It doesn't matter.
I'm excited to watching how Northwestern plays. I'm excited to possibly see some players who won't get lots of opportunities throughout the year, possibly getting a chance in this game because, this is a game that really should not be close. Northwestern should go out. They should dominate. They should be up early, and they should just really take a huge lead throughout the rest of the game. Because this is a good Northwestern team that we should be talking about and focusing on rather than focusing on Binghamton.
Okay.
Who's the star player to look out for on Binghamton since you wanted to put them up?
Okay, the point is this Binghamton game is I think really an important way for Northwestern not to just, get themselves cooking early in the year, but really to get the offense flowing, get the defense flowing, especially with a big game against Dayton on Friday. This is a Dayton team that is, supposed to be the favorite in the A-10. They lost to VCU last year in the conference championship game. And if they'd won, they would have been in March Madness, obviously. So this is a team with very high expectations. So this Binghamton game kind of feels like a game that Northwestern has to win. Of course they have to win, right? No duh. But just to see what this offense is at or what this defense is at. But okay, let's go macro. You want to talk macro. You don't want to talk
this is a season preview.
It is a season preview, right? But I'm just so pumped. Boo Buie.
Yes. You want me to go? Okay.
Here's the thing. There's so much hype. This time last year, the question about Boo Buie was, okay, very talented player. He can score, he can shoot the three ball effectively well. He can get inside, score using the right hand, left hand off the glass, whatever. He can do whatever. Consistency, not there. Boo Buie, obviously, last year was an all Big Ten talent. This year coming in on the Bob Cousy watch list. He was a Bob Cousy finalist last year, first team unanimous all preseason Big Ten this year, but he doesn't have his running mate Chase Audige.
So I have a hot take. I think Boo Buie is getting a little bit too much hype.
I agree. I actually agree.
I do not think he will finish the season in the first team all Big Ten. That is not to say that Boo Buie will not have a tremendous season. That is not to say Boo Buie will not be the leader of this team. I still think he will be dominant. I think he will arguably have one of the best Northwestern men's basketball seasons of all time. I don't think it will be as good as people are hyping him up to be. I don't think that's a hit on Boo Buie. I think that is more because of the supporting talent that he currently has around him. And I think that supporting talent really got overshadowed last year. Last year was really the Boo Buie and the Chase Audige game. And I think now there's a little bit more depth on the team. There's a little bit more guys who can make something work. Really excited for a Ryan Langborg, Brooks Barnhizer to take this big jump. Justin Mullins is someone I know we're both really big on. I think there's a lot more guys now who will be able to help out Boo Buie. And for that is the reason why, while Boo Buie is still going to be absolutely dominant, I think so many more guys are going to get attention now as well.
And I think the fact that so many more guys are getting attention, you mentioned Langborg, who the transfer from Princeton, really talented three-point shooter against McKendree in the exhibition match. He had 13 points, played really well defensively too. And, I know he's adjusting pretty well to being a Northwestern and really liking the team. You mentioned just, what it's like in the press conference after the win against McKendree. Feels like he's really fitting in. And it was clear against that McKendree team. But I think you're right. There are other talents on this team, especially guys that can create offense. If you look at Brooks Barnhizer, 29 points against McKendree, a point away from 30. He also had, 5 blocks, 4 steals. I mean, just defensive phenom. And he mentioned after the McKendree game that against Iowa State in the secret scrimmage when Northwestern lost, his defense wasn't good enough. The coaching staff went up to him, was like, you as the leader of this team have to be better defensively. And he was. And I think that's really the storyline this year is where does Brooks Barnhizer go?
Well, I think last year a big thing was he wasn't getting as many minutes as he's going to get this year. Last year, he was coming in off the bench.
He didn't start a game all last
Yep.
year.
But he showed what he could do in some of those games. Really, towards the end of the year, he started turning it on. Offensively is where we really saw him really make his big steps. And I think when we weren't sure about Boo Buie, about whether he would come back or not, we were really looking at, okay, can Brooks Barnhizer be that Boo Buie replacement? Now he doesn't have to be, which is the key part. Now he is how can he help Boo Buie? How can he complement Boo Buie? And I think that's where he's going to come in so strong offensively. Yes, obviously, we're looking at defense. We're looking at how can you replace Chase Audige and what he brought defensively. And while it'd be awesome, like for Barnhizer to really bring that, I don't think that's the number one thing for him. And I don't think that's really the number one thing we're expecting from him to be. I think we're expecting Barnhizer to be that guy who can create offense on his own and can create for other guys. And I think that is something that I'm really looking forward to seeing. The other guy that I think, while we're talking about big jumps, while Ty Berry started last year,
oh God,
Ty Berry is one guy where I was not the highest on last year. He struggled to shoot at times, and I think that is the biggest thing. Can Ty Berry make shots? If Ty Berry can hit threes consistently, this team, I'm ready to say this team is Big Ten championship level. However, if Ty Berry struggles again from the three-point line, he struggled a little bit in the exhibition game, then it's going to be, okay, how can the guys around him really make stuff work?
Yeah, Ty Berry's a really good point. I mean, this guy is somebody that from January on shot under 30% from three. He went 3 of 11 against McKendree. He's a guy that if he's feeling it any given night, he's electric.
Yes,
I mean, he scored 26 against Nebraska last year in Lincoln. And I mean, that was one of the more fun games of the season last year on the road. And he's another supporting player that really has to get going. But I go back to your point that Boo Buie's not a first team all Big Ten player. Because I've been sitting on that for a little bit. And I still think he is. I think he still makes Big Ten first team by the end of the year. But my bolder take, and I don't even know if this is a bold take, I feel like this is a lot of national media and especially Northwestern media hyping this up. But Brooks Barnhizer is a second team all Big Ten player by the end of the year. I really think that. And I don't even think it's necessarily an all offensive thing. We really saw it come on late last year, especially Big Ten tournament against Penn State, had a big game there, had double doubles, his first career double double against Rutgers in the season finale, and then another double double against Penn State. I mean, such an integral part of this Northwestern team last year. And this year he's in a bigger role. And the thing is, without Chase Audige, right? Of course, the defense overall is probably going to be a little bit worse. But I don't think that actually matters. I really don't. Because the thing is about defense is it's about really how much do you care? Do you want the ball? Do you want to try? Do you want to get down there and be difficult? And Northwestern under Chris Lowry really showed that they wanted to be difficult last year. Brooks Barnhizer's a guy that when he's on the court, he goes 115,000%, right? So I think that the combo of Boo and Barnhizer defensively, just with the grit and determination and attitude like that is going to be huge. Brought up Ty Berry. Let's talk about Ryan Langborg.
Okay.
Right? Berry, inconsistent three-point shooter. Langborg, kind of a down year shooting the three last year, but really showed what he could do in March Madness, against Creighton, especially against Arizona too, when Princeton kind of went on that run up to the Sweet 16 and then fell to Creighton. He is a guy that can be lights out for the league.
Absolutely. And I mean, we saw what he did with that Princeton team, and we saw how special that he can take that team. That was a Princeton team that nobody expected them to do what they did. And Ryan Langborg was a major, if not the key part of that Princeton team. So when you look at that and then see now that he has even more talent on this Northwestern team now, you also wonder how much can he elevate his play style as well? Because I think what we've seen from a lot of these players is we've seen that a lot of these players are talented, but we haven't seen their top level. I don't think we've seen any of these players' top levels except for maybe Boo Buie. And even then, I'd say Boo Buie still has levels to improve. So I think that's the biggest thing with Langborg as well is, how much better can he be? Because we know he can be good, but how much better can he be? And that's something I'm really looking forward to seeing as the season progresses, looking at seeing how he gets involved with some of this coaching staff. You mentioned Chris Lowry. I mean, he's someone where you're looking at the end of the season where if Northwestern continues to do what they did last year, you're looking at, maybe does Chris Lowry get a head coaching job somewhere, which I see as a very serious possibility after what happened last year. But yeah, there's just so much talent.
We've mentioned Boo. We've mentioned Langborg, Berry, and Barnhizer. Those will be the 1 through 4, the projected 1 through 4 of the starting lineup. Am I allowed to go on my normal 2-minute Matt Nicholson?
Only if you let me go on a 2-minute one after that.
Okay, absolutely. So Matt Nicholson, I've said this from the beginning of last year when I started watching this Northwestern basketball team to now. Matt Nicholson is the second most important player to this Northwestern team, hands down. I do not care what you have to say. I know Brooks Barnhizer is incredibly important, and probably in 2 weeks, I'm going to be like, no, Brooks is the second most important guy. But Nicholson in the Big Ten is so important. When you're going up against guys like Zach Edey, Cliff Amore, Dane Danger, I could go on with the big-time talents of centers in the Big Ten. I know that, all the little big banter people are going to get mad at me that I didn't, call out their team. But you know what? Zach Edey's still the best center in the Big Ten.
He's just tall.
He's
might, just tall.
He might just be tall.
He's just tall.
But he is the best center in the Big Ten. I know that the Turtleheads podcast is probably going to disagree with me on that one. But
I mean, I'll disagree with you on that.
Okay, but hey, you know what? Whatever. I just know that the Turtleheads, podcast, very, very. Yes. I've heard they're massive fans of Purdue.
I don't know.
That's what rumor is. I don't really know. Anyway, point is, Nicholson has the size to defend. And we saw last year that he was able to keep up with those guys. Sure, Zach Edey dropped 26 on him, but only 10 in the first half. And really, Nicholson made things difficult. Cliff Amore at Northwestern, only 4 points. Nicholson stood up to those challenges. He stood up to those tests. And sure, he doesn't have Robbie Beran playing next to him this year, which I think is going to be a little bit hard, especially with some of that double teaming action. But he's a big body. He showed that he can score. I would like to see him, shoot a little bit better from the line. There was a time last year, a stretch of 10 to 12 games where he was sub 30% from the free throw line. I think it was 26.7%, which is just atrocious. So if he's able to, improve the line and really gain some confidence near the rim. This guy is a guy that in the two-man game with Buie and the two-man game with Langborg, if Ty Berry has the ball, his hands, and if Nicholson can really just get confident, he's bigger than anyone else on the court. He just needs to go up with it and really just make an impact. He's also got to stay out of foul trouble, especially with what we saw from Luke Hunger in the exhibition game, where Luke Hunger got some minutes late, then instantly foul. I think he had four fouls in probably 10 minutes or so. So that's not great. And then Blake Preston too, a guy that I think is going to be kind of like a Titus Verhoeven from last year. A little bit of a different, kind of player, but very solid defensively, a little bit more athletic than Verhoeven. But Nicholson is guy is when he's on the field, when he's on the floor, he is a playmaker and he's an impact guy.
So I slightly disagree with the fact that Blake Preston's going to be that Verhoeven type, just because I think Preston's going to get more of a role than Verhoeven ever did. I don't think we need to dwell on that too much. I think Preston's probably lower on that depth chart than the rest of the guys we've kind of talked about. Although I'm still really excited to see what type of an impact Preston will make. With Nicholson, though, when you're talking about where he comes in, and you talk about being confident towards the rim, I think there were so many times last year where he had that
guy that was like 5'10" on him and he wouldn't go up with
it. Exactly. He needs to literally just go up with the ball, go up with it, get fouled on the way up. That is what he needs to do. Do that game in, game out. And even if he's shooting 50% from the line, 60% from the line, it's going to help out that team a ton, because you can go on and on about defensively and where he's at. I mean, that game against UCLA in the Big Ten tournament will be a game that just I'm going back to. If there's ever Matthew Nicholson deniers, or Matthew
don't
Nicholson
be a Matthew Nicholson denier.
Yeah,
bro is tall, and he will dunk on you, or he might be too scared to go.
But that UCLA game is the one game to just prove all the haters wrong. We always go back to the Tua Arizona game, back when people were hating on Tua Tagovailoa. And we were always like, the Arizona game, that proved what he can do. For Matthew Nicholson, that game is the UCLA game. I think it was 16 points in that game, arguably his best game yet as a Wildcat, or just ever. He's so strong defensively, he can just do it all. Matthew Nicholson is where this team goes. There's so many key parts of the team. But Matthew Nicholson kind of anchors it all together. And I think that's the biggest part of it. If he can shoot at all as well would be another huge thing, which I have zero clue if he's been able to develop any type of jump shot. But if you do anything besides just right around the rim, that would also be incredible for this team.
Another important stat for him, 40 blocks last year, tied for 10th most in program history in a single season. And you got to remember, he did not start the first 9 games of the year. So he started the next 25, but did not start the first 9, and just an impact guy. So now we've talked about the starting rotation. Let's talk about some role players that we really feel like can make an impact, especially maybe what we saw in exhibition play potentially. Let's start with Justin Mullins.
Yeah. I gotta be honest, I didn't watch a ton of the exhibition, but Justin Mullins, I think out of the 3 transfers that got brought in, Justin Mullins was my favorite. That's just me having.
Is it just because he went to Denver?
That's what I'm thinking as well. That's part of it.
Bro likes Denver. I don't know why.
But there's just, I don't know, Justin Mullins' game, I think there's a lot that he can do with it.
Yeah.
And I think that he can also defense. That's the key to kind of everything on this team. That's what this team's heart and soul is. And I think Justin Mullins brings that as well. But I think he also brings a lot more. He's just one of those guys that I think we're talking about him as a role player right now. But I think that as the season goes on, we could be talking a lot more about him just because he has that role that, in my opinion, I think he has one of those chances to make the starting lineup as the season goes on.
That is a bold take. I like it. Interesting thing, he played a lot of time in the exhibition match, and especially because Northwestern was banged up with a couple guys.
Yeah.
They couldn't play Jordan Clayton, the freshman. They couldn't play, and I don't know how big of a role he's going to have. Couldn't play Parker Strauss. Also, don't really know how much of a role he's going to have. They also couldn't play Nick Martinelli too, who's kind of projected to be kind of. You can play him as a 2, you can play him as a 3, you can play him as a 4, kind of. Nick Martinelli's another guy I know you're kind of high on too.
Yep.
As someone that you like, but I think Mullins is, for a Northwestern team that was at the bottom of the Big Ten in pace of play last year, was at one of the worst teams in pace of play in all of college basketball. He is a guy, ball in his hands, gets a defensive stop. He is flying down the court. He's going to be such an impact guy in transition. I was rolling through. So, once a week or twice a week, I go through the rabbit hole of Northwestern basketball. And I was going through Justin Mullins highlights from last year. And this guy can flat out run. And he's athletic. Gets out in transition, slams the ball down with 2 hands. I think he's going to be a really big playmaker for this team.
It reminds me a little bit of that Chase Audige play style, where he showed those moments as well, where, he gets a big steal and then transition the other way is just leading the rush. I mean, the Purdue dunk with 2 minutes left, that's just kind of what I think about. And I think that Justin Mullins can bring that similar style of play as well.
Is there anybody else that you really feel like you want to highlight, or should we just move into what does the first couple of weeks of the season look like? What are we expecting overall Big Ten play? Obviously, last year Northwestern coming off a conference record for Northwestern, 12 Big Ten wins. Their best conference finish, second in the conference since 1959. So it's going to be a little bit hard to repeat that. But do we feel like that's possible?
I definitely do. I think you take a look at Northwestern's schedule and you're like, oh no, this is a very tough schedule.
Yeah, I mean, you play.
However, that's the Big Ten. The Big Ten is an incredibly tough basketball conference. Yeah, maybe not once you get to the actual tournament, but during regular season,
ACC fan.
I mean, go Canes, but
hey, this is a Northwestern podcast.
Big fan. Hey, Northwestern. I love Northwestern. Love the Canes. I can love both of them. They don't play each other.
I saw this is 2 weeks ago. First, very way early March Madness, seeding, and it had Northwestern playing Miami in Pittsburgh. So
I'll see you in Pittsburgh then.
All right, I'll take it.
Anyways, when it comes to Northwestern and when it comes to this schedule and when it comes to what they can do, I absolutely think they can repeat what they did last year. Last year, a major part of what that season was there were so many close games. And Northwestern basically had that clutch factor, it almost felt like, where they were able to win those close games. I can't really remember many games besides the Rutgers loss at home where it was a game within 5 points that they lost.
Maybe Illinois on the road. I don't know.
Illinois on the road when we were up by 20 at halftime and then lost by 4. Yeah, don't get me started on that game. That one as well. But
I think that's another thing. We lost. We were in a lot of close games because we weren't playing that well in the second half.
I agree. So it's a question of, can they be consistent? And I think consistency will be key. I think a lot of these players now being in their second year, really being in competitive basketball will make a big difference. I think bringing in some transfers will also make a big difference. And I think just getting used to everything will make a big difference. So I absolutely think that they can finish on the top of the Big Ten once again. Obviously, incredibly tough schedule. It'll be a tough task ahead. I think playing at home games with Welsh Ryan and just the hype around the team with, student section stuff, it's going to be awesome. Welsh Ryan's going to be an incredible place to be. I'd argue it's one of the tougher places to play in the Big Ten right now.
I would argue it's the second hardest place to play in the Big Ten at this current moment, behind Mackey.
The small stadium's intimidating. The low roof, it keeps the noise in. Yep, absolutely.
And especially for those Big Ten games, it's going to be huge. Now, second in the Big Ten was crazy, and the Big Ten was stacked last year with just how close it was. The competitive nature and competitive aspect was incredible. Just with the fact Northwestern going into the last game of the season playing Rutgers on the road in Piscataway, you win your second, you lose your ninth.
I mean, that says it all.
That's all you need to know. And I think this year the Big Ten is weaker. right?
Yeah.
You've lost some of those big time playmakers, and sure, the Big Ten is going to be loaded with talent as it is every year. But remember, there's no Hunter Dickinson at Michigan. There's no Trace Jackson Davis. There's no Hood Schifino. You've lost. There's no Jalen Pickett at Penn State, right? There's different looks in different programs. I mean, Iowa has lost a lot of big pieces too. There's a lot of big programs with guys that are not in those spots anymore. And Ohio State's made some new changes and stuff. So where do you think Northwestern kind of ranks in the Big Ten? For me personally, I have them at 5.
Yep.
I have, Purdue kind of is still the benchmark. And then you've got Michigan State. And then I think that Northwestern is in that tier with Illinois and Maryland.
I think I agree with you. I think that I'd love the homer in me to come out and say they can finish second or third again. And
which they could.
They could. They very well could. But I think in terms of a pure prediction standpoint, in terms of being a little bit more conservative, I think 5 or 6 is right around that spot. Yeah. I'm not super high on Illinois personally. I think Northwestern finishes above Illinois. But I would say, you've got Purdue, you've got Maryland, you have Michigan State. I think they can all finish ahead of Northwestern. So I think 4 to 6 range is realistically where I'm seeing Northwestern falling in.
Yeah, and I mean, there's other really good, solid teams in the middle of the Big Ten. I know a lot of people are hyping up Wisconsin. I'm honestly, I might start the Wisconsin beef right now. I think that team is the most overrated team in the conference.
I disagree. I disagree.
It just is.
Connor CG and hype train.
Okay, dude's gonna be good this year, sure. I mean, but like it's the same team from last year. They got slightly better, slightly deeper, but they weren't very good this year. They really weren't.
But they were also in a ton of close games, just like Northwestern.
That's very true.
So if they flip the switch, 100%. All of a sudden Wisconsin, has a season like Northwestern did.
But here's my biggest worry from Northwestern. With the schedule the way it is right now, right? Northwestern starts against Binghamton, then they play Dayton. Tough game, right? We already mentioned that earlier. But after that, they only play 2 Power 5 games. They do play DePaul, so I guess that's kind of they're in the Big East, right?
Yeah.
So Power 6 for basketball, but even then, 2 real like big opposition talents. And that would be in their tournament. Hopefully, if they win and Mississippi State wins, then they play Mississippi State. That's a very solid SEC team. Very underrated. They're always in that tournament conversation. And then later Arizona State, which is not as good of a program, but still Power 5. So that definitely has some meaning. But other than that, the non-conference schedule is very weak, which is kind of concerning for resume, especially if you struggle in the Big Ten and go 9-11 or 10-10, and you need that resume to kind of boost you in.
Yes. You basically have to run the table, I would argue, in this non-conference play. If you're going to lose a game, it has to basically be that Mississippi State, one of Mississippi State, Dayton, and Arizona State, and realistically, you can't.
And it can't be Dayton.
Yeah,
that's a home game.
Yeah, that's true. It's tough. Really, it would be really tough to lose those games. I think hopefully, if you're Northwestern, you do a well enough job in actual Big Ten play that your non-conference schedule does not matter. And I think that should be the motto going in. You should be treating these games basically as, warm-up games, getting you ready for Big Ten season, because that's where it really matters. Yeah. But these games are all winnable games for Northwestern. They really should not struggle. That's where I see it.
But the thing is, I mean, we watched Northwestern last year, obviously. And, for example, a game like Pitt last year, where Northwestern, very, very strong start to the season. People are like, wow, this team can win some games. This is kind of impressive. Like, the storyline coming in was like, yeah, they've got some talent, but, like, I mean, they're not going to be anything. And then you win some games and you fall to Pitt, and that was a blowout. Really bad loss. Any given night, especially with this Northwestern team and their reliance on the three-point shot, one night's not falling. Yeah. You face a team that's sinking the three really well. They're playing good defense. Like, what are you going to do?
Well, that was the issue in that Pitt game was, I think that the issue of the Pitt game was a couple of things. One, everyone came in thinking Pitt was similar to a Northwestern, where they were going to finish 13th or 14th in the ACC.
And they were very good.
And then all of a sudden, Pitt goes out. I believe they were playing Miami in the last game of the year with a chance to win the ACC. Yeah. Miami ended up winning that game. Go Canes. However, Pitt
It's insufferable.
Pitt also shot, I believe, like 60% from three.
They were cooking.
That's not happening. If that happens, you tip your cap to a team and you say, okay, we move on. So I'm not expecting many blowout type situations in games like that. However, yeah, you're going to lose a game just because that's how basketball works. If every game was based on what was paper, Northwestern would be a very good team. They would be locked into a tournament spot right now. I think it's just incredible just to note that the turnaround of this program. I mean, last year, this time, before the first game of the season, everyone's like, is Chris Collins going to be around? Yeah. And then he wins Big Ten Coach of the Year, and obviously Chase Audige leaves, and Boo Buie decides to come back, and you get Ryan Langborg, and you get Justin Mullins, and you get Blake Preston, you get some good freshmen in the building, and this is a new revamped squad with
kind of the same. It's in a way, it's the same team, a different font. Is kind of what it is. And I'm very excited because Northwestern basketball is kind of where it's at right now.
Some of the most fun we're gonna get.
And it's some of the most fun we're gonna get.
Besides, of course, field hockey and lacrosse.
And
but
I'm
yeah.
really happy we haven't mentioned this Northwestern football team yet. I'm sorry. But it's an exciting moment. It's really the beginning of winter, which is obviously very dark and depressing being in Chicago and, daylight savings. And it gets dark at 4:00, but Northwestern basketball is why Northwestern students keep going, keep grinding through the classes and keep, cooking through everything. But it's going to be an exciting season. And I think in one way, I'm kind of scared that there's almost too much pressure on this team.
I understand that, but I think this is a team that can work with pressure. And I think that last year they were a team that basically went in saying, hey, just whatever's out there is out there to take. Now it's the different story, like you were saying, but I still think that shouldn't necessarily affect Northwestern. I think Chris Collins is a good enough coach that he can really help the team out and really make sure that they can play through that pressure and play through that adversity.
I mean, Northwestern last year was used to being the hunter, not the hunted. And by the end of the year, they kind of became a little bit of the hunted, especially after beating Purdue and beating Indiana. And now this season, they kind of are the hunted a little bit. They kind of have those high aspirations. They were picked 8th in the media poll in the preseason Big Ten poll, which I thought was a little low, to be honest. I mean,
but hey, keep that chip on their shoulder,
and that's what allowed them to be so successful last year. Will we see Northwestern back in an AP Top 25 poll this year?
I'll be advocating for it.
We'll see. I'm sure you'll hear a lot about that. I personally can't wait till all the Big Ten Big Banter podcasts that we have with opposing Big Ten schools at Illinois, at Wisconsin, at Purdue, at Maryland too, really. Honestly, all y'all. Michigan State should be fun this year. We beat them once last year. I can't speak. But yeah, I mean, any final thoughts?
I got a game for us before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Give me your over-under. How long into the game does it take for Northwestern men's basketball to match their same amount of points that the football team scored against Iowa?
Against Binghamton?
Yeah.
Amount of minutes.
Or seconds.
I'll go in seconds. So it'll be 236 seconds.
To score 7 points?
Yeah.
So that's just under 4 minutes.
Yeah. I think it might be a slow start.
That's a really slow start.
I think it might be a slow
start. Thinking closer to okay,
maybe 181. Nah, it's 3 minutes.
I'm thinking a minute and 17 seconds. So 77 seconds.
That's a fast start.
Yeah. I think they're going to come out flying.
Okay, so the over-unders at what? You said...
I think we should just go whoever's closer. I'm taking 77 seconds to reach 7 points. You were at 180.
226?
Yeah.
Okay, 226.
226 compared to 77. Okay. Big Ten record prediction.
Big Ten record wrap up. Prediction, I think we're going 10-10.
I think I'm right around there. Yep, I'm saying 10-10 as well.
I think 10-10 is very fair. It allows you to win a game out of the Purdue and Michigan State 4-game set, which I think is going to happen. I think Northwestern will steal one. I think they're a good enough program to do that. At the same time, though, I think it also allows for, a dumb loss against Iowa or a dumb loss against Nebraska, as Northwestern ultimately will shoot, 22% from three, and Nebraska or Iowa will shoot 37 or 39% from three, and then that'll be the game. Yep. Okay. Cats, Bearcats tomorrow.
They're the Bearcats. Okay.
They are the Bearcats.
I didn't know that.
Playing two straight Bearcats. Yeah, Binghamton team. Boo Buie going up against a former hometown state rival. Sure,
I don't know.
He's from Albany. I mean, Binghamton's kind of southwestern New York, but that's fine. Anyway, point is, very exciting start to the season. I better see every one of you in Welsh Ryan Arena, because it's going to be cool. I'm waffling at this point. It's too late. I need to go to bed.
It's 12:24. Happy game day.
Happy game day. Great. Go Cats.
Go Cats.